On today's episode of the Hart Hustle podcast, I sit down with John Davenport, the Dean of Students and Director of Student Life at the Ohio State University-Newark. Now, today's conversation is going to ask a really important question. Why should we even go to college anymore? Over the last couple of years, we've seen a dynamic shift in the way in which we approach higher education as a community and as a society. John's going to talk about some of the challenges that he faced in his academic career, how he's been able to leverage life and lived experience to help students navigate and make better decisions for themselves, the accountability that comes with growing up, but more importantly, the nurturing and enablement platform that higher education is today in our lives for helping us become the best version of ourselves. Really excited for you guys to check out this episode. John is an amazing leader, and he is an amazing individual who's helping us navigate these unsteady times in higher education. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the episode.
You may not be a professional baseball player, but those lessons learned are highly transferable to other endeavors in life. And that's the other part, right? It's, obviously your goal at the time was to be, I'm assuming a Major League Baseball player, but even if you didn't quite get to that journey, the time you put in, the ability to dedicate yourself to a task, as you maybe it's something current in other business endeavors and personal endeavors, those lessons are highly transferable. And so it will make you stronger and better equipped to handle other challenges in life that seem to have nothing to do at all with what you worked your way through. Students are educated and understand their resources. And in some cases, the resources have to be, you have to hit them a couple times with, doing this, because like right now, most colleges are going through orientation programs right now. I tell people 90% of what I tell you today, you're not going to remember. What we want to drive home is, I want you to know that when your student needs something, there are professionals here who will guide them and advocate for them and get them to those resources.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Hart and Hustle podcast, here for a brand new episode with John Davenport. And today we're going to be talking about the landscape of higher education. And I feel like there is no better person who can give us a true understanding of what the landscape looks like than you today, John. So, man, welcome to the show.
Keenan, thank you very much for having me. Great opportunity. I love to talk about what I do. So happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. I want to kind of start off by merging our episodes together. Our previous guest was a guy named Mark Dogie, and he is the leader of an organization out of South Florida. And in our conversation, we talked a lot about leadership. And he said something that really kind of caught me right in the heart. He said, in tough times, it is the people who are leaders who are going to step up and make the biggest changes. In this world of instant gratification and social media, followers are often not the people who are going to stand up and do things differently. So his question for you was, what is your defining leadership behavior? What do you see as the most defining behavior that can demonstrate who you are as a leader?
For me, I think the ability to listen as it's intended, to listen to as the message is intended by the sender. And I say that because I think, especially in this world today, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, we often either listen with our own lens in place. And so even regardless of what you're saying, we hear what we want to hear or what we've been preconditioned to hear. Or we listen with an agenda. We're not even really listening. We're preparing our rebuttal or preparing how we can take what you're saying and shape it and tweak it to my own ends. And so I think, there's action, there's planning and things like that. But really, as a leader, those you work with, those you serve, to be able to listen to them truly with the way in which it was intended, I think is the best skill, one of the best skills that a leader can have.
Forget who had the saying, but one mouth, two ears. You should listen twice as much as you speak.
That's
and
classic.
I feel like in today's society, we've lost the ability to actively listen. And that's a real challenge for a lot of people, especially in this instant gratification world, huh?
Absolutely. And the part is, we have so many messages and we have so much information coming at us that sometimes it doesn't seem like it's in our best interest to listen, because we have things coming. We have to process and react, because it's coming at us so fast that if we don't, we're going to be we're going to be 17 lines down and missed it, because people believe that because they have to respond as fast as the information comes in. And I think the leader who's comfortable again is sitting with that and, no, we're going to pause for a minute. Let me make sure I take this in, maybe ask some reflective questions and then go. I think that's an art that's um, less and less practiced and needs to be really high, much higher on our list of what we're teaching young people today, anybody and any leaders in particular.
I feel like we have a responsibility at some point in time in life to make decisions that are big, that have huge implications. Basically, are we going to go to higher education? Are we going to take the road less traveled? Are we going to be an entrepreneur? There are so many opportunities and choices in life. And like you're talking about, over the last couple of years, it seems like there's a lot of misinformation, if you will, that kind of comes out about higher ed and what it really means from the participation and the output that you're going to get from experiencing higher ed. So I want to talk about that a little bit, but give everybody a little understanding of your current position and kind of what you do at your organization.
I'm currently the director of student life and dean of students at a shared campus. It's the Ohio State University-Newark. It's also Central Ohio Technical College. And so it's a great part. We're a shared campus, cost shared. And so I have the benefit of working with the traditional institution at the Ohio State University, but also at a community college, a technical college, Central Ohio Technical College. And so for me, it's a great opportunity to work with those who want the traditional higher ed path or exactly what you're talking about, folks who for a lot of different reasons. I'm an adult learner needing some certifications. I'm returning to it and I can't afford to take a lot of time off. I need to get some certifications to better my family situation. So oftentimes, and I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, there's this dichotomy of there's one type of higher education. There are multiple types. And so I love that I have an opportunity to work at a place here in Central Ohio that offers both, and I get to serve students on both of those paths. And sometimes you have one move from one path to the other. They go back and forth. Sometimes one path leads into the other one, from the technical college into the four-year institution. But I'm at a beautiful place, and it's really a nexus of what we're talking about in higher education, of the different paths the students can take to better themselves, to support their families, and do well all in one institution. So I really, really love what I do.
I want to talk about your journey a little
Mhm.
bit to bring you to where you're at today. In our previous conversation, you mentioned an individual who had a huge impact on your life. Their name was Clarence Shelley, I believe.
Yes,
Who
sir.
was that individual and what role did they play in your life?
When he came to me, Shelley was, I believe he was the assistant provost at the University of Illinois, but he was an advisor to our fraternity. He's a fraternity member, and his role was to Shelley was the unofficial. Um, I'm going to be careful with my language. At a time in the country where there was a lot of we were divesting from it's a long time. We were divesting from South Africa. There was a lot of Black pride and the start of a lot of that movement. Shelley's unique role, great administrator, but he also had an ear and a heart for the students, in particular students of color. And so, Shelley used to joke that um, he was the Black people wrangler sometimes, right? If there was a student sit in, we were big into sit ins as protests back in those days. If there was a sit in or something like that, Shelley was generally the first administrator on the scene. And so he also was the advisor to my organization, my fraternity. And so when I hit a rough patch, when I for and it's strictly my own fault, too much partying, too much playing around, got dismissed from the university. Shelley, my parents were freaking out. Shelley called them and said, "Hey, I have them." He took me. There was a community college, Parkland Community College in town in Champaign-Urbana. He took me over to Parkland, got me registered, helped me work out an agreement with the University of Illinois that if I did so many credit hours and got a certain GPA at Parkland, I was assured readmittance back into the University of Illinois. And so he checked in. He made me come in weekly to do check-ins with him in my time at Parkland, and made a difference in my life. When I got back into the University of Illinois, um, at that point, I had my career plans were changing. I said, Shelley, I want to do what you do, man, because you made a difference in my life. My parents, to this day, my dad's still here, are grateful to him. And so one man's direct intervention and hard, we call straight talk and some hard truth sometimes, is why I'm here where I am today, right now. So he's passed away not too long ago, but I owe it all to Dean Shelley, is what we all called him.
And isn't it amazing how one person can step up and do right by you when you can't do right by yourself, and they can put you on a path that's going to be one that is destined to impact so many other people. The one thing that I really love about your story is being somebody who is showing up for the students is so much more important than I feel like any of us really tangibly understand, especially when we're at the education process. Because one of the conversations I would love to talk about a little bit later in the podcast is the misconception about higher ed is just waking up and going to school, right? Coming back home, waking up and going to school, doing that on repeat. But you said in our previous conversation that it's been proven that students who do that don't have the best experience and don't perform the best in school as well. There's so much more that comes with this process. But before we kind of dive into that stuff, what is the misconception that we're kind of dealing with in the country right now with higher ed? What's your 2 cents on that?
From my perspective, what I hear and it drives me crazy is, and I'm a lifer in higher education, so obviously I'm a little bit biased. But what I hear people talk about is the exorbitant cost of higher education, and you hear these stories about someone coming out with $150,000 in student loans. There is a cost to higher education, and because of dwindling state appropriations, there was a time when our states paid for a huge chunk of public education, and therefore the cost to the consumer, to the families, to the students was less. Over time, as appropriations to higher education have gone down. In order to make that up, we've had to raise tuition. So tuition in a lot of places is very, very high. But again, with people, a lot of the things you see, not all, but a lot of things you see are these exorbitant hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. You dig deeper, and that's somebody who got a law degree from Yale, or you know what I mean. Again, and I've primarily worked in public. State flagship education, University of Missouri, University of Illinois, where I attended. I'm here at the Ohio State University. And I talk about those paths. And so if students want to attain higher education in a reasonable and a timely manner, I can point a student on multiple paths that can get them a college degree in a field that will earn, um, in some cases, for significantly less than an SUV, than a nice SUV. And so, but we're told that the student debt crisis and things like that. And so the only way you can get higher education is to go into debt and have to give a limb and your firstborn and things like that. And it drives me crazy because I'm a testament to it, that there are ways to achieve higher education, high value degrees in education in a way that's manageable and affordable. It involves our community college system, our technical colleges. It involves maybe some state institutions versus certain private schools and private institutions and things like that. But the conversation is so simplified, and it fits our modern narrative that, it just, when people talk about that, it drives me crazy. There are multiple ways to get what we need out of higher education.
Fits our modern narrative is a perfect way to kind of sum it up, because I feel like in a lot of those conversations about you're going to go to school and you're going to come out with all this debt and you're not going to be able to find a job is kind of a lack of accountability, but also a lack of a plan, right? If you're going to go to school and get a liberal arts degree or something that has no tangible impact on your ability to make money in the marketplace, then yes, you're going to probably come out of school with a whole bunch of debt, not a lot of experience that you can apply towards your field of choice. And that's going to then create some hardships downstream. Is that kind of the intersection where you were talking about that call or the technical aspect of the organization at the Ohio State University at Newark that gives you that flexibility to kind of cross those paths and identify what you're looking for?
Absolutely, because I think, and the key part about it is, um, I think there needs to be, like as with any decision, you know, there needs to be, time to sit down and talk about it, to plan, to consider, to have good guidance and advice. Um, Especially a lot of folks, especially first generation students and things like that, who might not know. I was speaking to we're in the middle of our orientation, our summer orientation for our incoming freshman class, and talking to a mom today, and she was asking some questions that, for somebody, like me, who's been in higher education for the last 30 years, super easy to answer, but she didn't know, and she just hadn't been exposed to it. She was her student would be first generation. And so I think sometimes with those conversations, and again, we can get into K-12 education and what folks are not getting when they come to institutions, or the preparation, and it all starts with education and preparation, right? And so I think, again, we're fortunately at a place that's small enough that we can have direct contact. We can help folks have those conversations. Any place I work would probably murder me to hear me say this, but there are times when telling a student this institution isn't the best fit for you is what's best for that student. Or maybe you need to spend some time at a local college or someplace closer to home, or a smaller, public. There are a lot of things that are so individualized about higher education that I think what gets lost is it's not just a one size fits all. I want to go to college, so I'm going to go to the biggest institution on the block. that might not be a good fit. And so again, but because we don't have those mechanisms for everyone to get the same education, to get the same education about higher education and about the practices and making good choices, I think a lot of people, by the time they realize where they are, a good number of student debt, if you really look under the numbers or beneath the numbers, is people who have a couple years of college but don't even have a degree
Exactly. Yes.
because they got kind of caught up in the meat grinder and spit out, but the debt is still there because Caesar, rent under Caesar, what is it? He will get paid. And so those are the kinds of things. And so of course those folks skew it because now they have a large amount of debt. They don't even have a degree to show for it. So the types of jobs they can attain, aren't the same. And so paying back the debt is doubly difficult. And so there's just so much. There's so much context that needs to be explained in these situations, that I think if people knew, I think it really would change their view and perspective on higher education.
No, I mean, I totally agree. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because your unique perspective is somebody who is a lifer in the space. And so you understand the elements that are necessary for people to make good decisions. One of the things that really inspired me about our last conversation is you had mentioned that when you went to school, the expectation of higher education was to sit at the feet of your professors and learn from them. And eventually something good was going to happen for you. How has the landscape changed now? What did you mean by that statement?
And I think it's a great thing. A lot of folks have bemoaned it, but it's a great thing. I grew up and I'm 52. And so for me, high school was 85 through 89. And so again, the modalities in which things were taught were very, very old school and traditional, right? The teacher at the front of the classroom lectures, um, and talks to the students, and you take notes and you write that down. A lot of memorization, a lot of rote. I learned this. Like I learned the 50 states. Like I remember, I can spit. Give me a state, I could spit the capital. But then we had to the next phase. We put it on,
Michigan.
oh my God, Ann Arbor. No, right?
Lansing.
Listen, oh my God, and Michigan State
So
people are going.
close.
Well, I'm at Ohio State, so nobody cares about Michigan.
That's what I'm saying.
But right, so it's like, but then the next stage was you have to actually fill it in on a map. Where I had memorized it, but now I got to fill it. You know what I mean? So that was education then. Now our students are so much smarter because of all of this information they have access to. They're so much more, I think, more inquisitive. They are used to being engaged in different modalities. So I'm going to have to do a little walking and talking. I'm going to have some AV presentations. I'm going to have to do some short videos, some audio clips. I'm going to have to do some hands-on. Um, Students today are demanding to be engaged in multiple ways that kind of trigger all the parts of their brain, and that is huge. And again, I'm not here to paint the rosy picture that higher education is always right. Higher education overall does not change quickly. I always joke it's like sometimes trying to steer a cruise ship with a clown car wheel. We
Yeah.
are sometimes slow to change, and so, but our students today are demanding that change, and a lot of it's coming from the external forces. But we've got to adapt and move on and adjust, if we're going to be successful, because the students are demanding it. This old school way of teaching just isn't working.
I mean, especially because of the pandemic, right? I mean, we saw the pandemic as a catalyst where everybody went into this digital world. We started doing everything so asynchronously, instant access to information, multiple different modalities of engaging with content. If that's reading, if that's presentation, like you talked about, video presentations, audio stuff. What are some of the other culture elements that changed in higher ed because of the pandemic? I'd love to hear from your perspective.
I think a big part is just that, like, but how and the timing and how information is delivered, right? And so I can, you talked about synchronous versus asynchronous. Someone can watch this podcast live when you drop it, or they may save it for a car ride a week later or 3 days later. Um, Oftentimes in higher education, I'm going to speak broadly, um, we've come to believe that our information is best delivered fresh, right? And so getting a big thing I will say is getting faculty, getting people in higher education sometimes to deliver our message. Because some of us are, I'm fine with recording my conversations. What they mean is I want to straight record it and just drop it on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Students are saying, not only do I want the lecture, but I still want ways to engage. And so it's not just a lecture up and maybe a PowerPoint attached with some notes. Um, there's some we want this to be a little bit more responsive, right? So if I have specific questions in the moment, I want to be able to still reach out to you via chat and drop that question. Oh, seeing this prompted something, and so I may send you an email, or I might expect you to be in the chat, or I may want you to be the chat within um, the Zoom. We're seeing some of the funniest things I've heard is some folks as they deliver content. And like when I'm trying to do my thing, and I look up and all these questions are popping up on the side. Like I don't have time. I'm focusing on it. You know what I mean? But that's how these students think. They're listening to you, watching. They're firing off questions, and then God forbid, I can direct message you. Hey, did you understand this point? And um, it's people would in general just call it multitasking, but I think it's the ability to deliver information in multiple ways simultaneously or very, very closely coupled together. That is one of those things. Because again, if it was just a matter of delivering a lecture and recording it and you reading it at your leisure, that wouldn't have been a huge, huge change or adaptation. But it's again a video, some text, maybe some more audio, because now you drop a word on me, I don't know it. While I'm listening to you, I'm going to go ahead and open up a browser, find it. Oh, okay, got them, and get right back to it without breaking a sweat. And so, a lot of people feel that that's divided concentration and things like that. But that's the way, because the information is available. That's the way a lot of people process now.
I mean, I think a lot about consumer behavior. I talk about this a lot in business in general. The consumer behavior that we experience in other parts of our lives means that we expect it in environments like school and work. And if those things are not met, then we have a feeling of inadequacy, right? Like something's wrong here. We're not getting the same amount of engagement. The feel, the touch, the information is not the same. It's a really interesting perspective. I want to talk a little bit about the transactional nature of students today, because this is something that you really got fired up about in our last conversation. So what do you think has caused this transactional nature, and what does the transactional nature of student mindset actually mean to you?
I'll start with the cause first. Again, as I talked about, when the relative cost of higher education was not that high, um, students it was just such a good bargain that students didn't quibble too much with um, the cost, and or not the cost, but they didn't quibble too much with how it was being delivered. I'm getting a great service. It's a great price, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm fine with it. You're the expert. You're the master. I have to go through all this administration, this bureaucracy and crap. I'll deal with it because what I'm getting in the end is so beneficial to me. Such a minimal cost. I'm fine with it. As that subsidization, as that appropriations from the states have gone down, and more costs has come up, and it's taking more and more for students to attend. I think, and don't get me wrong, I think rightfully so, students and their families are demanding a little bit more responsiveness um, in the process. Now, where I think it goes sideways and goes off the rails is this isn't, I worked, grocery stores and things like that. There's a saying the customer is always right. Um, in my view, in higher education, students aren't customers. Um, they are here to be educated. Right. And so sometimes education, one of the things when I talk to families, I tell them it is my job to make sure you get all the information you need. But I never
Mm.
promise it's the information that you want. Right. And so sometimes, you'll hear things like, well, that instructor gave me a C, or, as much money as I paid, families often say as much money as I'm paying, they should be getting more than these poor grades. Well, you earn the grade, right? Coming and paying isn't a guarantee of a certain outcome, right? You still have to come in, put in the work, learn, and things like that. So right now, I think folks are so caught up on the sticker shock. They say, for what I'm paying, I better get X. Um, really quick tangent thing I use with my students all the time is, in a lot of ways, it's not a perfect analogy, but in some ways, higher education is a lot like a health club. Right, like I tell people, like I'm joking. My wife and I am recently married. Are going to on a vacation, Aruba in December.
Oh, nice.
I got to get in shape. I love hot wings. I love bourbon. Now, if I join the health club but never go, and then come December, I'm on the beach looking sloppy, I can't go back to the health club and say, you cheated me. I want my money back. Where are my six pack abs? I didn't work out. I worked out twice a week, still ate wings. You know what I mean? So, again, it's a poor analogy, but you're paying in higher education, you're getting access to faculty, staff, support networks, tutoring, resources, um, and we should make them open and inviting to you. But ultimately, the participant, though the student, has to engage with those services. You have to go to class. You have to engage with tutoring. You have to use the writing lab, the math lab, and that's what, to me, the transactional piece breaks down. Because if it was a matter of you pay X amount of dollars, you're guaranteed a degree when you walk out of here. That's a
Mhm.
clean transaction. It's not that you're paying for access to resources, facilities, instructors, teach things like that. And I think, again, a lot of folks get it, but when you're looking at a huge number, um, and when things hit the fan, like right now in orientation season, parents love that message. They're so happy with it. Yeah, that's right. My kid's going to work hard, and students are like, I'm going to give it at my all. Talk to me again in November
Right.
when grades are about to drop. We'll be having some different conversations. I tell people like, remember this moment. I wish I could take a picture every day. Remember this moment. We're all singing "Kumbaya." We're all happy. We all agree with it. Um, and sometimes things change a little bit.
Do you feel like the lack of accountability on a personal level is what kind of contributes into the, if my kid is paying for so much, or if we're paying so much money for the education, they should be getting these grades? Because very much like your experience when you talked about in our previous conversation, you went to college, you got involved in all of the social elements, and unfortunately that's where your focus went. And so that's where all of your resources went. I was the exact same way. I went to school at a school called Coastal Carolina down in Myrtle Beach, South
Turning Myrtle
Carolina,
Beach,
Conway,
absolutely.
technically. Yeah, exactly. Went there and got distracted, was doing the wrong type of stuff, was still paying for education, had a scholarship to play baseball and stuff like that, but I was not accountable. And I feel like the holistic college experience in itself was a lesson in accountability. You're not under mom and dad's wing anymore. You're not at home. You're by yourself. It's your job to take advantage of all the resources that are necessary and here for you to get the best bang for your buck. And that was something I was hoping you would be able to talk about, is maybe the message of higher education that isn't spoke about, which is all of the surrounding resources that are so important for students to be involved in.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. We were like I said, we were cut from the same cloth. And the tricky part about it is it's a balance, right? Because again, a lot of folks want to blame it on students, and they just don't want to take accountability for anything. A lot of people want to blame it on. Again, like with most things, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Um, if students are educated and understand their resources, and in some cases the resources have to be, you have to hit them a couple times with, okay, doing this, because like right now, to most colleges are going through orientation programs right now. I tell people 90% of what I tell you today, you're not going to remember. um, what we want to drive home is, I want you to know that when your student needs something, there are professionals here who will guide them and advocate for them and get them to those resources. Same thing with the students. We tell them, you're beautiful. You got this plan. When things go awry, it's not just about you. You don't have to just worry about disappointing my family. Things like, there are folks who will help you manage it and navigate it. You just have to be willing to ask. And so I think that's the part that, and there's some accountability with that, because we know a number of students for different reasons just kind of tap out. Um, and just continue partying, doing their thing. But there are just as many students who, if they remember where to, or were comfortable enough to reach out, because the higher education can be intimidating, right? There,
Mhm.
everybody got titles out the wazoo. We go to, everybody's got all these things on their wall when you walk into faculty offices, and we half our stuff is in this regalia, right? The pomp and circumstance of it, and it can be really intimidating for a lot of students. And so I think there's some additional accountability needs to happen on part of students, but I also think institutions need to design um, interventions and resources in such a way that we are reaching out to the students and continue to let them know that we are there and we are available for
I mean, one of the messages that I got when I joined my fraternity, when I came to UNLV here in
them.
Vegas, was it's not about just being a part of the fraternity, but it's about the relationships that you build here that are going to play for the rest of your life. Me being a
Absolutely.
young 21, 22-year-old kid, didn't really believe that. But now today, I'm currently in business with two of my fraternity brothers
That's
who have
awesome.
gone down their own paths, and we've been able to leverage that connection. I want to talk a little bit about the social media voices that say
Mm.
that higher education and college isn't really necessary today. What do you say to those voices?
And I think, I'm qualified in it. I think it depends on the path that you're willing to chart for yourself. And success in that regard is, it's just as much work being an influencer, right? A successful influencer is just as much work as attaining a 4-year degree. And I'm talking about the ones who, have all of the trips paid for, not the ones who faking it with the trick shots and things like that. The toilet lid pretending like it's a plane window for a private jet, right? But to
Yeah.
really be these people who are raking in millions of dollars, they are hustling day in day. They are putting in a lot of energy. They're putting in the same, in some cases, maybe more energy than it might take you to go to school, to go to class, to study. And the more successful ones, most of them did not achieve that success overnight. It took time. And so I think sometimes that message gets lost, because that's not a fun, sexy message for me to put out in, if I'm trying to package myself and the glamour of my lifestyle um, as the product, right? And so oftentimes that's not what we're going to share. That's not what they're going to talk about. Often, if you'll get them and inquire most of some interviews, they'll talk about it. But the package, the product is all about success, easy breezy times, happy living, and again, we tend to focus on that. I was looking at something recently. I was talking about, I just fell into this trap talking about why vacations nowadays are becoming more stressful. And one of the things they
Mm.
talked about was one, because of social media, right? We see everybody taking their beach vacations with their washboard abs and on the surfboard, and so that we feel like we have to live up to that, right? In our vacation, I'm just talking about I got to get in shape to go on vacation. It's kind of dumb, right? I should be able to go enjoy my vacation, but and so again, those messages they resonate and they do have an impact on us. And I do think younger adults um, who haven't had as many experiences, who are still seeking um, validation, recognition, value from their peers, I think it can have an outsized impact on many of the folks of that age, especially high school age and even early college age. And so I think that outside influence on them and on that lifestyle sometimes overshadows the fact that in order to do most things in life, again, you play baseball. My goal was to be the starting shortstop for the Chicago White Sox. That was my dream.
Mhm.
Man, I couldn't even come close to hitting a curveball. You know what I mean?
Charlie was breaking you off. Yeah.
Right. Look, and so it's like, people think, oh, athletes. Anything that's worth doing requires a great degree of work and dedication and concentration, but the good ones we don't see it, right? Because we see the end product. And I just think that's the message that needs to get conveyed more. And we need to talk about how we can make higher education palatable. Um, and you can do that work, and you can reap some shorter term rewards as well. I think, I'll shut about this, but I think another thing we talk about with higher education is you got to do 4 years, or if you want a master's degree, it's 6 years. It's all about wholly deferred rewards, and that's something that this generation is used to. Um, I call out the micro rewards from like in video games and things like that. They're used to a little bit more acknowledgement and some rewards at
Yeah.
kind of benchmarks along the way. And again, higher education has got to be a little bit better at that as well. It's not about you do all of this and at the end of the rainbow is your reward. We can find ways to give people some recognition, some support, some rewards along the journey that help incentivize them and keep them on the right track.
Man, brother, but it's tough to fall in love with the journey process. I was going to ask you how many things in your life have come instantly
Hmm.
and have been a huge return on your effort when you've been like, man, that was really easy. And now I'm all set. How many times has that happened to you?
I can't think of a time when it has. I joke with people. The only time I grew up in a family that played the lottery. A couple times I hit $40 on the lottery, right? So a couple
Hey,
times I dropped a
okay.
dollar on a box, three numbers box, and won $40. That might be the only time. It still cost me a dollar. I'm dating myself again, but other than those lottery tickets, and I paid a lot more than I won even with those. And so
That's what I'm saying.
I can't think of too many things that were high reward, little low work, low effort. Just can't think of them.
Yeah. One of my buddies, his name's Dante. He's a partner in my business. He talks about marketers ruin everything. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He was like, we are always trying to come up with a marketing message that is quick and easy, zero
That's right.
effort, no time, passive income, instant gratification, instant reward, because it's something that we're attracted to because we always want that shortcut.
Yep.
But if you really think about applying yourself to anything, being a shortstop for the Chicago White Sox, trying to play baseball professionally, there were so many days where I spent in the dirt taking ground balls, hitting curveballs, trying to get better. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out for me. But I'm still glad that I was able to put in the work to actually get there. And I think that that's something that we need to hear a little bit more in society, the echo chamber, if you will, is that great things do take sacrifice, or at least seasons of sacrifice in our life in order to accomplish great things. But they don't last forever. It's just a season in our life. And I feel like
Awesome.
that's really important to kind of echo.
Absolutely. And I think the other part about it is you may not be a professional baseball player, but those lessons learned are highly transferable to other endeavors in life. And that's the other part, right? You, obviously your goal at the time was to be, I'm assuming a major league baseball player, but even if you didn't quite get to that journey, the time you put in, the ability to dedicate yourselves yourself to a task, as you maybe it's something current in other business endeavors and personal endeavors, um, those lessons are highly transferable, and so it will make you stronger and better equipped to handle other challenges in life that seem to have nothing to do at all with what you worked your way through. And I think that's those aha moments that come. And those again, those aren't instant things. Those are things later in life. How many times have I think about it, in life that something that somebody was trying to drill in my head, 4 years ago, it clicks. Oh man, I get it. And that's what that's all about, right? That's what it's all about.
Do you have a tough time deploying patience in your life? I recently took a behavioral assessment, and part of my behavioral assessment was I am impatient when it comes to results, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. How do you kind of deal with patience when it comes to accomplishing things in your life?
I think, ironically, the older I get, the more difficult it gets. Um, I've been fortunate enough by being in the game when I was working more directly, and I still have a good amount, but when I was working more directly with students, um, it was easier. The other part was it's where I was in my particular life journey, right? When I was young, like I took pride in, I'm starting at the bottom too. I'm here with you. Um, and so it was easier to be patient. The other part was, um, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And again, I wasn't in a horrible place, but I wasn't the Fresh Prince, right? And
Hmm.
so I grew up, I saw some things in life that I was like, you know what? It's not that. You know what I mean? I saw some people come to some rough ends. It's not that. And so I had some early life experiences. My parents were amazing, and letting me stumble and fall and bump my head a couple times. And so I had a good perspective. For me, getting into the higher education space early on, I was like, this is great because I'm dealing with low level issues, right? Um, at the time, I didn't have the awareness, even though it was low level for me. You know, you getting kicked out of school, and I tried my best. That's what I thought at first. As I grew a little bit more empathetic, things changed. So, early on, it was easy. I was crazy patient because I was like, at the end of the day, make it not, I'm all right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But as I became more empathetic and understood the importance of each individual case, what it meant, then, I don't know, the middle tier of my career, I'll leave it that way, trying to put dates on it, years on it. But um, that's when that patience really grew with some kindness and more empathy. And so I think I was definitely better. And now, um, in a more administrative role, I'm kind of seeing it from both ends. Early on, I only dealt with the student, and so all this chatter from outside about, let's get rid of this work, and higher education, practitioners are overpaid. I wasn't, so I didn't even think about it. You know what I mean? Now that I'm kind of on both ends and working with the students, but I'm also trying to push back against some of that. So now my patience is a little less, but it's going both ways. Sometimes with students, I'm like, really? Come on, man. And sometimes with, the things I see happening in the world, I'm like, come on, people, we got to be better. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's ebbed and flowed.
Be- because we're talking a little bit about some of the soft skills here.
Mhm.
In our last conversation, I brought up a book into this conversation. This is 12 and a Half by Gary Vaynerchuk. Dropped this back in 2021. The subtitle of this book is Leveraging the Emotional Ingredients Necessary for Business Success. So there's 12 and a half ingredients or soft skills in here, and I want to get your opinion about some of these. What role does curiosity play in your life, John?
It's I have to know why, right? And I want to ask, and I need to know. And again, working with such a diverse, with on any size campus, curiosity about the personal stories and where my students have come from, helps me find ways to engage with them and learn about them. And so that's what I tell, that's what higher education is about, the stories to me, and all the different students I meet and interact with. So always, if I'm not curious, I'm not going to be doing this job anymore.
I love that. Last one I got for you is ambition. What do you think about ambition?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. And I say that because I think ambition to a certain degree is good. Um, you know what? And let me my fault. I'm boxing myself in. Ambition to do positive things. I think in my head, I first went to ambition. I think about money, car. There, you can be ambitious for any number of things, and so I think ambition, and so you hate to use this word, for the right things. Ambition for things that are, um, that give, for beyond just the material, I think is a phenomenal. More education to learn more about people, ambitious to improve yourself. I think the ambition can be a great thing. Again, it's just I got to get out of the trap of thinking about being ambitious about certain things. So I think that's a great thing for someone to be a leader and to be successful.
Man, I was really hoping that you were going to be able to pick up on that
Yeah.
nuance because a lot of people today think about ambition as I need the next car, I need the next house, I need the next dollar value. But I'll tell you what, man, I've had some experiences in my life where I've been surrounded by other successful young entrepreneurs who are pulling down like multiple six figures a month. And I'm like, man, if I could do some of the stuff that these guys could do, I would be happy. At some point in time, I was able to get the car, I was able to get the things. And there is no scarier feeling than dedicating your energy and your effort into accomplishing something that is materialistic. You obtain it, you put it into that hole inside you, and it disappears, and that hole is still there. That is one of the scariest experiences. And so I think about ambition in the element of being able to have healthier relationships, being a trusted friend that people can call on, being somebody who does things that they say they're going to do, aka a man of your word, holding myself accountable towards doing the things that I know I should be for myself and for others. I feel like those things are inputs that create the output that can create those monetary things downstream. And I'm so glad that you took that there, man. I really appreciate that.
No, it's great. And again, it's just something to remember.
It really is. I want to use our last couple of minutes here to kind of talk about your perspective. What does the future of higher education look like from your lens? So much has changed. Like we talked about over the last couple of years, we've got new generations coming into the space. We've got great leaders like you holding down the fort, ushering us into a new age. What do you kind of think about the next 5 years, 10 years of education?
I think there will be, in most places, not all, some places are immune to it because of the nature of migration, but many states where I am in the Midwest, some of the northern states, we're talking about a demographic cliff. So in higher education, there are going to be a number of places that, as a result of the depression of a recession, whatever you want to call it, of 2008, this is about the time students born about that time would become of college age. Things got tough. People don't have as many babies. And so in a lot of places, we are seeing a demographic decline in the number of available students. So I think there's going to be a little bit of contraction in higher education. I think a lot of institutions are either going to have to merge or totally shut their doors. Where I am in my area in Central Ohio, and just the 2 years I've lived here, there have been 2 smaller private institutions that have shut down. I think, and again, primarily tuition based. In order to support the tuition, it's got to be really, really high. So I think there's going to be a little bit of contraction. I think there's going to be a trimming. I shouldn't say it that way. There's going to be a reduction in staffing. There's going to be for 2 reasons. One, because administrative, what some people perceive as administrative bloat will be trimmed, but the other part, there are fewer people who want to do this kind of work who are going to be coming into the field. And so I think, a little consolidation, some issues losing staff for multiple reasons. And so I think those are going to be some things that are going to freak people out and in some ways kind of drive some change. I think the change is we will become better at integrating technology into the educational process. I think you will see more of what we call micro-credentialing. And that's where I think the community colleges and technical colleges are poised. So, 6 months, get a degree that allows me to work in a clean room for a chip manufacturing company, not necessarily and earn a good living. And if I want to continue, I can stack another 2-month class, another 6-month class. I think we're going to see more creation of more of those. And I also think we're going to successfully in the next 5 years integrate artificial intelligence. Right now, it's many folks see it as an opposition to learning. The tool there are some amazing things that can be done, and I think as we see it brought into the fold and not seen as what are ways we can block AI or catch people who cheat using AI, how can we begin to incorporate it into what we do? I think the institutions that are successful, and I think higher education is poised to do that. We're going to be, I think, going to be the leaders in integrating that into our educational processes. So a little reduction, some scaling down, but I think the places that are survive are going to be stronger, more tech savvy, and engage students in a lot of the different ways that they need to be engaged to be successful.
It's interesting to kind of think about the conversation of artificial intelligence because I have it so much on the podcast. You've got 2 camps, really. You look at people who often think that AI is going to be the end of the world, right? Or that it's going to be the accelerator that's going to help us do more with less. And the end of the world conversation very much sounds like back in 2000 when everything was going to tick over into the zeros on the computer and everybody was like, make sure you got enough water in the bathtub because we're going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? It seems like we continue to make these mistakes over and over again. There's one interesting study that talked about, McKinsey released a study that said by the year 2035, I want to say, that there was going to be 800 million displaced jobs because of AI. At the same time, there was going to be 860 million jobs created because of AI. So which side of the headline are you going to be on? When I think about higher education, we need to adopt technologies that help our team do things that are more meaningful. It's an interesting time in history because a lot of the unfulfilling work that I hear so many people complain about in the ethos of work is repetitive stuff, redundant stuff. I don't like answering questions. I don't like going back and forth on email. Now we have AI that can do that stuff and put humans in a higher leverage seat to have meaningful conversations. And like you said, talk to that parent or that prospective student, say, this either is or this is not a good choice for you, and this is why. By the way, you can obtain all of your information via the technology that we've got available at your fingertips. I feel like it's an interesting time to be able to leverage the human element instead of thinking about it as a replacement, if that makes sense.
Oh, I wish I could. I need to bottle that and share that with a lot of my staff and the people I work with. It's, again, technological leaps are followed by a lot of, generally, we're talking about probably from the wheel to the motor car, right? The motor, it's panic, freaking out. This is going to end us. And then people gradually adopt, figure out new ways, see the benefits of it, and infuse it into our lives moving forward. And so I think, again, that's going to happen. Again, in some ways, I just think, again, we have much more access to more information, more of the doom and gloom. And so, again, you're absolutely right. I think the places that are successful, because not everybody will. Some people will go the way of the dinosaur, right, and just hold on to it. And I think those folks are probably going to be underemployed in the future, if employed at all, being real about it. But I think other folks, those who adapt, industries that adapt, are going to stay robust and find ways to better serve their constituents and provide meaningful employment for the people who want to be in those fields.
And I feel like that's kind of what we have to, let's go back to that element of curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be curious about what the future looks like. It's not a red, it's not a blue, it's a purple, it's somewhere in the middle. That's where we're going to be able to find success, because often what got us here is not going to get us there, man.
Mm-hmm.
So John, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to use the last couple seconds here for you to pose a question for our next guest. What do you got?
And I think you kind of touched on it, and I'll be looking forward to hear other folks' answers on it. We talk a lot about soft skills and the value of them, but I want to hear their perspective on the best ways to quantify those soft skills for folks who are living in a transactional world. How can how can we package those in such a way that folks see the value in them, and somebody who might not necessarily be inclined to, but how can we quantify and help articulate the benefit of these soft skills in a marketplace that's so dominated by how much things cost and the value, quote unquote, of everything.
Well, there we go, guys. Thank you once again for everybody who is watching and listening today for the Hart Hustle podcast. John Davenport, again, appreciate you for being on the show, man. That's a wrap.
Man. Thank you very much. Whether you be well.